Cherokee tones. There are four level tones. Low, which is represented by the number 1. The mid or default tone, which is represented by the number 2. The high tone, which is represented by number 3. And the derivational or super high tone, which is written as a number 4. There are also contour tones. There's a rising, which is a 2-3, falling, 3-2, low fall, 2-1, and the low, which is derivational, 1-1. Did you know that you already use Cherokee tones when you speak English? Below are isolated examples of the same tones used in English intonation. So level tone cognates. So these are the tones that we use when we talk Cherokee, but you use the same tones when you speak English too. So 1 is like when you go, and you're thinking of what to say next. 2, this is your normal speaking voice without any intonation or emotion, just regular, plain, monotone speech. Like it's. So if you want to know how to change the tone of your voice from a 2 to a 1, you just say so that's a 2 down to a 1. And the 1 tone is the lowest range of your voice before your voice starts to break or crack. Like if I said and I went lower, my voice starts to crack. So it's the lowest that you can go comfortably. 3, what? 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 Like someone asked you something and you didn't quite hear all of it and you say, what? What? It's just a little higher than it's what? It's what? 4 tone? No. When aggravated. You can also, you also hear this tone when you're surprised, like, oh, oh, oh. It's what? Oh. Like now I understand. It's what? Oh. Now I understand. So that right there goes through all the tones. Contour tone cognates. 2-1. You can hear this on an unsympathetic or sarcastic dang. Like, oh, you didn't pass your test? Dang. Very, very rude and sarcastic. Unsympathetic. Dang. And you can hear your voice lower when you go, dang, dang. And then the 2-3 rising. This is when you are eliciting a question with a single word. Right? Right? And then you answer that by saying, right, 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 right. Okay, English sentences with tone marking. This shows you English sentences that use the number tone system that I developed or modified from Durbin Feeling's original tone marking. So 2s are our level tone. And if there's 1 number, it's short. And if there's 2 numbers, it's a long vowel. So I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he did that. Is that for me? Is that for me? So me is the rising tone. Yes, you already used Cherokee tones. Below are examples of single English words, and by altering their tones or intonation, the expressed meanings are changed. Yes, that's just neutral, uninterested. Yes. Positive response. I agree. Yes. Like you got it. Yes. 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 Again, that's eliciting a question. Yes. 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 That's a little higher. And that tone sequence is actually not in Cherokee, because that's an abnormal tone sequence for Cherokee, but it does exist in English, and nonetheless, it does show you how to articulate tone with your voice. Yes, yes, aggravated or irritated. Yes, 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 like I'm listening. Go on. Yes, yes, reserved, indicating doubt. Yes, like maybe, I'm not sure. Yes, like you're answering yes, but you're not really sure if it's correct. Frequency. Some tones occur more frequently than others. The two tone is the most common tone. That's why it's called the default. And it's also the most that you see in most words too. Three is very common. You see it a lot on the suffix endings o, e, e. And four, not very common as far as traditional words, but it is used very commonly for deriving words from other words. That's why it's marked as a derivational tone. So, gonotly, gonotly, that's a castrated animal. And then you apply the derivational tone and you have gonol or gonolly, gonolly, lazy. Gonol, gatu, means on top. And then if you apply the derivational tone, gadu, means bread, because it rises to the top. 2-1 tone, that's common. So for instance, you see that on the prefix agi, ah, ah. That's 2-1, agi. First person pronoun, meaning me. And scone, that's the question suffix. You'll put that on a word you want to ask a question. Like, scone. Is it cold? 2-3 rising. That's very common and it only occurs on long vowels. And the 3-2 falling is very common and it only occurs on long vowels. Derivational or super high tone. The super high 4 is only found on the rightmost long vowel of a word. So here's some examples. Number 1, dum, dum. And that's a young animal, either from a litter or hatched from an egg. Young animals, atnita, atnita. Egua, large, egua. And wahanit or wahanita, young wolf. That'd be like the family name or a Cherokee name. In 1 and 3 above, another rule is governing over the rule that states the 4 tone can only be found on the rightmost long vowel of a word. Since number 1 and number 3 above are both 2-syllable words consisting of short syllables, the 4 tone is placed on the first syllable of the word, because the governing rule states that Cherokee words cannot end with long syllables. So if you need to apply a derivational tone, and the word consists of only short syllables or short vowels, then you're automatically going to place the 4-4 tone on the first syllable of the word. Practicing tone application. The examples below have the same number of syllables in both Cherokee and English. Practice saying each English translation with the Cherokee tones that correspond with each syllable. So, number 1. Hello, how are you? We're going to apply the same Cherokee tone to the way we say this in Cherokee, but we're going to apply that tone sequence to the English word. So, Sion, hello, Tohitu. Is it peaceful? But we use it to mean are you well? Tohitu. So, hello. How are you? Hello. How are you? So I'm using the same tones that I use when I talk Cherokee. I'm just using English consonants and English vowels, and I am pronouncing them in the English language, the English proper tones, sounds, and phonics. But in Cherokee, our vowels are pronounced differently. So that's where the accent comes from. Sion, tohizu, Sion, tohizu. It is very, very important to make sure that your consonants and your vowels are said the way we say them in Cherokee, not the way you say them in English, or it makes it very unbelievable that you're actually trying to achieve an authentic accent when you talk Cherokee. But don't worry, because you can do that. It is possible. You just have to work on your vowel and consonant pronunciation in Cherokee. Number 2, o sequel. O sequel. That's like saying just fine. O si, fine, and gu, just. O sequel, just fine. So it's just fine. It's just fine. Now that does sound awkward, but it's the way we would use the tone sequence in Cherokee. Number 3, nawoti. Nawoti. Medicine. Medicine. And the more you practice that, the more you'll be able to see how the tone markings in English can be transposed over to Cherokee. That's why it's really important to harness your knowledge of the cognates, like what tone exists in English that also exists in Cherokee. And then when you isolate the words in your own language or the way you speak, your speech pattern, when you isolate those tones in specific words, you always have something to remind yourself of what that tone is. So that way you won't need a fluent speaker there constantly to help you with pronunciation. Examples of Cherokee tone. So our first example is the low 1-1 falling. It's classified as a falling tone, but there is actually a 2-1 falling. But 1-1 is a level tone because it comes from derived meanings. And it occurs only on long vowels. So our first example word, sogi, sogi, onion. Kostu, kostu, ashes. Then the 2 mid or default tone, it occurs on long or short vowels. So in our first word, we have 2 long in the first syllable and 2 short in the second. So y, long, gi, short, yagi. And that sounds very monotone and it does not change. The only thing that changes is the length of the vowel. Y, yagi. Like I can't, yagi, fork. And ale, and. The 3 or the high tone occurs on long or short vowels. The long, ge-ga, I'm going. The short, itse. Now, it is important to note here that the short pronunciation of itse, is due to omitting the final vowel of the full word, which is itse, new. This is very common in Cherokee, and as long as you know that the overall rule is that no Cherokee word can end in a long vowel. So if you cut that final vowel, that is going to force the new final syllable to be short. So you're just cutting the length of the 3 tone off with the final vowel e. Itse, becomes itse. Okay? The 4 or derivational or super high tone. This occurs only on long vowels. So e used, that means like. Or you could say iusti and not cut the final E. Iusti. And that would be a 2. I put the 0 there to show you that we just cut that E a lot. Iust. And egua. Egua. Large. 2-3 rising. It is also important to remember all contour tones, rising or falling, can only be long vowels. They cannot occur on short vowels. Eh-huh. Eh-huh. He or she is living. Eh-huh. Cola. Cola. Bone. 3-2 falling, again, occurs only on long vowels. Ghetto. Ghetto. Right, right. Ghetto. Right, right. Ghetto. Ghetto. I'm going around. All sty, skunk. All sty, skunk. All sty, skunk. So here we have our pronoun, which is all. All. That's our reflexive. Ali. That's the reflexive, meaning oneself. Sty. Sty. And then this is normally cut, this sequence, this So sty. You can say sty, but most people just cut that. Sty, he or she is eating a meal. Sty, Pronunciation guide. So here we have our vowels. First we have our syllabary form. Then we have our phonetic representation. And then our pronunciation. And this is just in regular layman sounds alike. So ah. And that is always There's no short A or a long A like in English. It's always like A as in law. E as in set. E, I as in ski. E. O. I have not found this sound at all in English. This is the vowel that most second language learners have the most difficulty pronouncing from what I've noticed. O. It is more pronounced in the back of the throat. It's not like the English O, where you go no, and it is articulated in the front of the mouth. In Cherokee, it's in the back. So this is the difference. English, if I'm going to say no in English, it's no. But if I say no in Cherokee, it's no, no, no. U, U as in flu, like he got the flu. U, and And it's also important to remember that all final vowels in Cherokee are nasalized, not just So if a word ends in a vowel, it's going to be nasal. And how you check that is you grab your nose and then say that vowel. And if you feel vibration in your nose, then you have achieved the nasal quality of that vowel because it is resonating in your nose. The consonants stem from the 6 vowels shown above. Presented below are the consonants and how they are pronounced with the vowels. For those sounds that have a corresponding English example, those words are presented with parentheses around the part of the word that contains the Cherokee sound. For other sounds that did not have a corresponding English equivalent, a simple sounds-like example has been given. So even though O is different than English, I do give English words that do use O, but it's not the same pronunciation. So we're going to do the first row. So ga, as in gone. Ge, as in guess. Gi, as in ski. Gon. It's not go, it's gon. Gu and gun. Nasalized. Gun. This is just like the UN in uncle. Ha, haul. He, heavy. He, home. Who, hum. law, le, lever, li, long, lu, lun, ma, molly, me, met, me, mole, moo, and there is a m. Na, not, no. This is the same sound, but you breathe out through your nose to create that aspiration. No, 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 ne, as in net, ni, no, nu, no. Gua, as in quantity. This can be gua or qua. It depends on the word that you're using. Gue, gui, guo, gu, guan. Sa, se, si, so, su, sun. Da, de, di, do, do, dun. Tla, tle, tli, tlo, tlu, tlun. This one is also pronounced with an H, where it would be hla, hle, hli, hlo, hlu, hlun, where you're just replacing the T with an H. And how you produce that is you say law, but you breathe out through your mouth as you say it. Hla. Ja, je, ji, jo, ju, jun. Wa, we, we, wo, woo, won. Ya, ye, yi, yo, you, yum. Special sounds due to vowel deletion. Now remember, vowel deletion is indicative of fluent speakers talking. It is not a reflection of the full morphemes or the full way something should be written. That is why in today's Cherokee literature, there's a lot of discrepancies in the way words should be written. Lots of speakers don't know all the full morphemes of what they're saying, so they fill in the gaps of the deleted vowels with whatever letter they feel is appropriate. But it actually is misconstruing the meaning of the word when they do that. HW as in WH in Cool Whip, the way Stewie Griffin says it. Cool Whip. So whip, whip. HY as HU in hue, huge, and human. KHK as in CKG in background, background. And an example Cherokee word is dekiloan, dekiloan. He or she is washing something, things that are flexible. Dekiloan. But that's just like saying he's washing clothes. Dekiloan. KS as X in tax. So jukes. This KS is right here. When you cut this A vowel, it leaves KS. Juke something. Juke something. KD as CKD in back door. Back door. Kt, kt. Ktihan. 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 He or she's using it. Ktihan. KT as CKT in quick turn. Kt, kt. So sanctum. Sanctum. Squ as SQU in squander and square. Squ, squ, squ. Two are also. DL as DL in cold last night. Cold last. So if you run these two words together, you're going to get the DL sound. Coldla, coldla, dl, dl. Oddla, oddla, rubber. TS as TS in cuts and lights. In Durbin's dictionary and a lot of other orthographies, this letter is written as a J, but I don't actually remember growing up hearing a J sound. I actually in school had to go to speech therapy to produce a J sound, because to me, I always heard TS, like tss, tss. We already had the word itse, but I didn't say EJ, EJ. I don't remember making that sound growing up. It was itse, just like the way it's written in the old syllabary, TS. TSKW as in quit squawking. Quit squawking. And then here, this symbol here is called a glottal stop. This is when you're speaking and the sound is abruptly cut off, and then you continue speaking again. So an English example would be uh-oh, but it's also found in glottal T's where you don't actually say the T. So like when you say, what are you doing? You're not actually saying T, you're saying what are you doing? What are you doing? Another good example of a glottal stop is hot dog. Hot dog. You're just saying hot dog. You're not saying hot dog. Hot dog. That's the same sound in Cherokee. When you see that glottal, that is the sound you're supposed to make. Hot dog. Okay? Tone and verb parts. The Cherokee verb consists of the following parts in consecutive order. So first we have the pre-pronoun prefix, the pronoun, the root suffix, aspect or conditional suffix, which is what I call it, tense suffix, and any additional modifiers. So we're going to take an example verb and plug it in these areas. So the first area, we have the pre-pronoun prefix we, which means there, like over there. Ed is the pronoun meaning we. Hjal, that means to look for in the completive stem, because we're using an aspect or a conditional suffix which requires the completive stem of the root. Then our root suffix is H, but you can't see it in the word because all H is fused to the left. And then our aspect, ito, and that means to go about from place to place. Tense suffix, which is the past tense. And on this particular word, we have no additional modifiers. But that's where you would put like a question marker or emphasis or something like that. And the verb we have is witihalito hai. Witihalito hai. We were looking for it from place to place there. So you use that there to say we're no longer there. I'm telling you that we were there at some point. So the sections above that are shaded in light gray have predictable tone. So the pre-pronoun, the pronoun, the aspect or conditional suffix, the tense suffix, and the modifiers. Those three sections all have predictable tone that do not change. They're all well documented, and there is nothing that changes their base tone or their default tone. The only thing that makes it look like they change is possibly when it connects to another morpheme that has a 3-tone, and that causes tone spread, which we'll cover later. And the root suffix is also predictable, but they are comprised of consonants, and consonants do not carry tone. So simply because root suffixes are all consonants, that's why you don't have to worry about their tone. Excuse me. Their tone sequence, because they do not carry tone. They just connect to the consonants and vowels around them. What is of interest is that when these morphemes or word parts join together, they can create tone changes that can seem difficult but are not as complex as one might think. So here's some examples where pre-pronouns cause tone change. So the pre-pronoun de its default tone is a 3-3, and that's the verbal pluralizer. The 3-3 tone can spread rightward, but only onto long vowels. If the following vowel is short, the 3-3 tone will stay on the pre-pronoun day. The tone also cannot spread rightward if that vowel is already a 3-3 tone. So you can't spread 3-3 onto 3-3. It will just create a sequence of 3-3, 3-3. So down here is three examples, one with tone shift and two without tone shift. So with tone shift, we add the day to the verb ga soka, which he or she is crossing water. So de ga soka. The day causes the pronoun ga to raise to a 3-3 because ga is a long vowel. De ga soka. Okay, no tone shift. De ga tli si ha. De ga tli si ha. He or she is gathering them. So because ga is already a 3-3 tone, the 3-3 just stays on day. De ga tli si ha. Okay? And here, de ga no za. Here, the pronoun is a short vowel. So de cannot spread onto a short vowel because it has to be of equal length. So de ga no za. It just stays on day. De ga no za. De ga no za. Okay, here's another pre-pronoun. I, Y. The two X's here stand for any vowel that will connect to this prefix. But if it does, it will cause that vowel to become a 3-3. If the vowel that it connects to is already 3-3, then you don't have to worry about it. It will just fuse together. So when we add it to a word like this, iuwakti, iuwakti, that means however many times. So like sawa iuwakti, sawa iuwakti, one time. Iudetiada, iudetiada, however many years. So you could say like talsko, 20, iudetiada, 20 years. Modifiers or clitics that cause tone change. Remember, all three tones must be long syllables. Due to this, any suffix modifier that is a three-tone will cause the previous vowel to take one of the three tones, which causes a rising tone. So here, if we say, Jayo siha, you are hungry. Jayo siha. And we add the question suffix ju. That is generally marked as a three-tone, but what happens is it causes the other mora. So a long vowel consists of two-syllable moras, and a short vowel consists of one-syllable mora. So ju actually consists of two-syllable moras, 1, 3, and then another 3, making a long syllable. So for instance, this syllable here, see, with a rising 3. The reason why this syllable is rising is because this is penultimate tone. That comes from Iroquoian. This is it's a 2 mora syllable. The first mora is 2, and the second mora is 3. And that's what makes it a long syllable, or a long vowel. Mora is just a linguistic term which says the amount of counts in the syllable. So again, when we add ju to a word like this, we have Jayo siju. Jayo siju. Are you hungry? Here, the ha syllable has been deleted to allow the rising syllable to connect to the question modifier. This is possible because we still know that this is present tense because of the stem form. This is using the incompletive stem. Jayo sihas, or Jayo siju. Jayo siju. Are you hungry? In summary, pre-pronoun prefixes and suffix modifiers are the only verb parts that cause tone change. Tone and intonation. In English, intonation is used to convey emotion or importance of context. For example, English speakers can use intonation to place emphasis on a single word in an utterance to show that it has more importance. Test this for yourself by placing intonation on the single word in bold below. So, the big red car, the big red car, the big red car, the big red car. This is a feature of English that does not exist in Cherokee. Due to the fact that Cherokee is a tonal language, we cannot allow anything to interfere with the tone of a word, or the meaning can either be modified or rendered meaningless. Tone is a crucial aspect to the speaking and understanding of Cherokee. In English, you could say the word car with multiple forms of intonation or pitch changes, and everyone will still know that you are saying car. This is not possible in many tonal languages, including Cherokee. Now, for learners that are trying to learn Cherokee and they're saying a word, a lot of times we can just guess what they mean and understand what they're trying to say, but it is still extremely difficult trying to figure out what they mean if their tones and their pronunciation is not accurate, which is why it needs to be a formal part of second language learning, or at least with Cherokee, because it's just like Japanese, Chinese. If you don't do well on tone, it's very, very difficult to understand what you're trying to say. If we don't use intonation the same as English speakers, how do we use intonation? In Cherokee, we use suffix modifiers to convey intonation, and we use root suffixes for conveying focus of the action. So, suffix modifiers. The suffix wu or wu-in. Most people don't say the full form of it, but wu-in. Suffix used for emphasizing a particular word. So if we suffix that on the word osta, which means good, we end up with ostawun, and it's just good. Ostawun, just good. Dun, this is a suffix that means definitely. Ostadun, ostadun, it's definitely good. Ostadun. Now you can also, in Cherokee, if you have consonants or full syllables or even vowels that are similar, you can just fuse them together. And you end up saying osta, osta. So basically this last dun fuses with the middle, with the dun on the word. And then you let the new tone take precedence over the two. So we still know what you mean. Osta, it's definitely good. But there's nothing stopping you from saying the full way. It's not incorrect, and it's not wrong, and it's not even frowned on. You can say it either way you want. That's the beauty of a polysynthetic language. It's still going to be understood as long as your vowels and tones are accurate. Osta or ostada. Root suffixes. H. This means horizontal motion focus. So in the verb ulehti, this bolded H means for one to stand. Focuses on the motion of the action. So we're focusing on the action of standing. Ulehti, for one to stand. So the root suffix there is just making the focus be on what the word is most important of the word. Because we have root suffixes that can focus the person or the object or multiple other things. Glottal, that means vertical motion or stationary focus. So in the first one, he or she is learning. The glottal is focused on the fact that no movement is visible in the action itself. So if someone is learning, that's not really a visible thing because it's happening in their mind. So that's why it gets the glottal root suffix. Another example, gate'an. He or she is removing a hanging object. So here the focus is on the vertical motion. Focus is on the vertical motion of the action of taking something down from up and down. Gate'an. Okay, then S is subject focus. Uyohu-sa'i. Uyohu-sa'i. He or she died. Focus is on the subject or the person that died. Uyohu-sa'i. G is object focus. Atliga, atliga. He or she is pouring it. Focus is on the object or the thing being poured. Atliga. SG means subject-object focus. So, for example, aditaskan, aditaskan. He or she is drinking it. Focus is on the fact that the subject is drinking it. S is he or she, and G is whatever they're drinking. Aditaskan. TS is a finalized or completed focus. Uyo zheng, uyo zheng. She or he became spoiled. Focus is on the finalized state of the subject. Uyo zheng. Note, this root suffix is mostly found on verbs that use the transformative conditional suffix as part of the compounded root. In. This is not a true root suffix because it comes from the populative infix on. So, du l'instant, he or she is working. De is the verbal pluralizer. U is the set B personal experience pronoun. La wisht means to thwart, and that's an incorporated infinitive. S is its subject focus. And D is the infinitive tense suffix, and that's called an incorporated infinitive. On is the populative infix used on most incorporated infinitive verb forms, and it is used in order to put this incorporated form into a completive state so it can take other conditional suffixes or what they call aspects. So by putting that populative infix on, we're now able to add the applicative, which requires the completive stem. So the applicative conditional suffix is in its incompletive stem form because this is working. So that's incompletive. It's not done yet. It's still happening. The work is still happening. A, that's the applicative suffix. And a is the present tense suffix. De l'instant néant. So someone is thwarting things for another right now. So it could be, whatever the work they have you doing, you're basically thwarting issues or problems or work for that person. And then this 0, this means that the root does not have a suffix and is found on the immediate stem mostly. Haditan, drink it. Note, the immediate stem generally does not have a root suffix because root suffixes are used to classify action. A command is not real action in Cherokee worldview, and this is why it cannot be classified with a root suffix, because if I'm commanding you to drink it, you haven't drank it yet. It's not been drunk, so it's not really taking place in real life, so we don't classify it with any type of action suffix or root suffix that classifies the action in some way because it's not real action. Expressing tone in written Cherokee. Linguists have described the creation of new words or new verbs as derivation. And what this means is that the noun root or verb root is undergoing a tone change in order to convert the original root to a new meaning or to change the word class entirely. So, for example, when a verb root is converted to an adjective, adverb, or etc. We will first look at some examples of derivation and how they are formed. I will give the examples according to which stem form they are derived from and discuss the changes that are made in order to reflect the new derived meaning. Secondly, we will look at how these tone changes are reflected in syllabary writing. Incompletive stem derivations. So we're going to take the verb form, adlaeskai. That means one was turning off. And we're going to apply the tone change to the rightmost long vowel, which is and say adlaeskai, a turnoff. So we took that verb and converted it to a noun. The pronoun switches from 2-1 realistic to 2-2 unrealistic. The rightmost long vowel increased from 2-3 past tense to 4-4 anytime. And that is what converted that to a noun. Okay? Adoniskai. Adoniskai. One was talking to themselves. That's a verb. Adoniski. a sorcerer. That's a noun, an agentive noun. So this is reflecting the observation that medicine people appear to be whispering to themselves when they are reciting medicine verses or incantations. So the pronoun switches from 2-1 realistic to 2-2 unrealistic. The rightmost long vowel increased from 2-3 past tense to 4-4 anytime. So this is how you convert a verb in the incompletive stem to a noun. Completive stem derivations. One fried it. So it's like saying he or she fried one piece of chicken. Just fried one thing, it. So we can say and that means fried as an adjective. So what we did is the verbal set B pronoun u switches to set A G. The rightmost long vowel increases from 2-3 to 4-4 tone. And that's how we convert that verb to an adjective. So that is a completive stem verb being converted to an adjective. Okay? Completive conditional derivation. Udant, one's mind. That's a noun. We can now increase the rightmost long vowel's tone and say udanti, and convert it to an adjective meaning kind. The rightmost long vowel increased from 2-2 to 4-4. We can then say a word like udantisanai. That means tamed or sober. The addition of the completive conditional suffix isan, meaning customarily, reflects that the root mind is thoughtful in a social or customary way. The rightmost long vowel increased from 2-3 past tense to 4-4 anytime. Infinitive stem derivations. Udlisti, for one to pour it from a container, which is a verb. We can now say atlistotti, a liquid container, which is a noun. So what we did is the set B pronoun u switches to the set A pronoun a with a tone change to 3. The instrumental suffix tohti is added to the infinitive stem to form a noun that is a tool for something or it is instrumental in doing something. Likewise, we can say usuisti for one to paint, which is a verb in the infinitive, and disuisti, which is paint, a noun. Essentially, this derived noun is void of a pronoun, and the unrealistic or deverbal pluralizer d is added directly to the stem to reflect that there is more than one paint and definitely more than one variety and also color. The use of the unrealistic pluralizer is what changes the word class of this verb to a noun. Disuisti. And some speakers may say disuistoti, and that just means that you paint with it. Particle derivation. Adawehi, magic or one's own magic or magician. It can mean all of these things, which are nouns. So a is a set A pronoun. Ada is an outsourced reflexive, meaning you have to do it with something other than your own means or your own bodily capabilities. We means current or energy, and he is a purposeful suffix. So then we can do a tone change and say adawehi, which means magical as an adjective. The rightmost long vowel increased from 3-3 to 4-4, signaling a change in word class in order to describe something as being just like the noun. Verbs derived from verbs, noun and verb incorporation. One changed it. That's a verb in the completive stem. For one to change it. That's a verb in the infinitive stem. One is taking turns with another, which is a verb. So set B, switch to set A. The outsourced reflexive adad was added. A new root suffix h was added to change the focus of the action. A new tense suffix a was added to convey that the action is happening right now. So this is an incorporated infinitive. That's the infinitive. Writing to reflect tone. There are a total of 8 tone articulators in the syllabary. Keep in mind, this is not going to be found in any other book because this was taught by my aunt growing up. This is old knowledge of how the syllabary was used, and it can also be seen in the original Cherokee Phoenix. These articulators have been used by highly literate speakers for many years since the invention of the syllabary. Their use as articulators can be seen throughout the Cherokee Phoenix newspaper before removal, and this knowledge of the syllabary seems to have been non-existent in the translation of the New Testament. The likely reason for this is because the New Testament was translated either in whole or in large part by a non-native speaker. The 8 articulatory syllabary characters are shown below. These are the characters that are used to convey tone change. Additionally, there are 2 sets that are used to convey how familiar with the object the subject is. The characters that alternate to show familiarity are na, and dla, and tla. This is useful to the recipient of a written letter because it lets the reader know how much the writer may know about a particular subject. It also does not matter which character in the word substitutes for an articulator, because when we see that an articulator is being used, we know immediately that the rightmost long vowel will need to be read with a higher tone. So tone articulators are ka, na, s, ta, te, ti, dla, and hna. And familiarity alternates are na and tla. Each of the above articulators alternate with their non-aspirant forms to reflect words that have tone change or have changed word class tonally. So for example, ga alternates with ka, na alternates with na, s has no alternate. This is why Sequoyah wrote his name as Sequoyah. He used the s character to indicate that his name is a proper noun. Da alternates with ta, de alternates with te, d alternates with t, dla alternates with tla. So we can say adleska'i, and that means one is turning off a verb. But when we write this form as the noun turn off, we write adleskahi. And simply by writing this he character, that is telling the reader to increase the tone of ga to 4/4. Adleskahi. We don't actually say he, but we write that to reflect the tone change. We still say adleskahi, but some speakers do say adleskahi, just because their speech quality matches their literacy level. Again, adoniska'i. One was talking to themselves, verb, and when we say it as the noun, adoniski. Simply by the agentive suffix ski already signals a tone change, therefore an articulator is not really necessary. But s is still there. Adoniski. Note, articulators are not necessary for particles unless their formation required a tone change. So squeezti would be written squeezti. In such a case, an articulator would have to be used to show that the rightmost long vowel will have a higher tone. Particles are combinations of bound morphemes that have set tone, and that is why we don't need an articulator to know how they should be pronounced. Expressing familiarity. So here we are using an articulator na and na. They're pronounced the same. It's simply an articulator. Naski, he, she, or it not familiar to the subject. And naski, he, she, or it is familiar to the subject. So you can imagine how important that would be in a letter, because then we know what we can ask for more information about, and we also know what the writer may not know very much about, simply by the way they wrote the letter. We use the letter he to show the tone change of and we use the na to show that this person is familiar. So my family, of course I'm familiar with my family. Na shows the familiarity, and he is the rightmost long vowel tone change. Morphology and tone. Throughout the Cherokee English Dictionary, or the CED by Durbin Feeling, 1975, you will find multiple what I call tone contractions. These contractions are no different than are not and aren't in English. These are simply contractions that we are able to create in Cherokee because our language is tonal. It is also important to note that these contractions are not grammatical or based on any rule in our language. They occurred the same way English contractions occurred. People just started saying them, and they became accepted amongst speaking groups, communities, and entire regions. Documenting these types of contractions without explanation, however, make it extremely difficult for someone to learn the correct morphemes, and makes it almost impossible to build a root word method teaching curriculum. In this section, I will show you several examples of documented verbs that contain tone contractions, and I will also give you the decontracted form of those verbs. It may interest you to know that the decontracted forms cause the pronunciation to be much more tonal and reflects the speaking patterns of the elders in my family that I grew up around in Sequoyah County area. It is also important to note that Cherokee has a tonal feature that is well documented in the Iroquois language family. That feature is known as penultimate syllable stress. This means that the rightmost long vowel has tone stress by default. Many elder speakers still to this day pronounce penultimate syllable stress. However, most speakers today predominantly contract penultimate syllable stress, as shown below, which dilutes a large part of our language's musical quality. So the first verb example is one sees another or it. So the contracted form, agotihan. Decontracted form, agotihan. So it's much more tonal and musical sounding. Agotihan versus agotihan. One is cutting it. Contracted form, aganhalehan. Aganhalehan. Decontracted form, aganhalehan. Aganhalehan. One is smothering or suffocating another. Contracted form, ahawostihan. Decontracted form, ahawostihan. Ahawostihan. One wants it. Contracted form, udulihan. Decontracted form, udulihan. Udulihan. One is bouncing it. Contracted form, adadinadihan. Decontracted form, adadinadihan. Adadinadihan. One is praying. Contracted form, adadolistihan. Decontracted form, adadolistihan. Adadolistihan. One is committing adultery. Contracted form, adahyonehan. Decontracted form, adahyonehan. Adahyonehan. The underlined portion above is the applicative conditional suffix, and morphologically has a long vowel. Due to the fact that the applicative suffix happens to be in the penultimate syllable, choosing to contract the tone on a word such as this makes it difficult for students, linguists, etc. to be able to detect morpheme boundaries or recognize the meaning of the word. Tone contraction is a natural part of Cherokee communication, but ideally, it is my belief that students need access to complete morphemes in order to grasp the language, and once able to communicate, can begin to contract the same as fluent speakers. A strong foundation of Cherokee thought must first be formed, and then accurate shortcuts can grow from those skills. Pronoun tone expressing relation and reality. The 4 stem forms: incompletive stem, completive stem, immediate stem, and the infinitive stem. The incompletive stem can be real or unreal. The completive stem can be real or unreal. The immediate stem can be real or unreal. The infinitive stem is always unreal. So I'm going to give examples of how they can be real and unreal. In the incompletive stem, here are 2 real forms of verbs. Naniwe ska'i, she was stating. Gawani ska'i, she was speaking. And then here's examples of unreal. Gawani ska'i, she was speaking supposedly. It is classified as unreal simply by adding the supposed tense suffix. Aniwani skesti, they will speak. That is unreal. So the pronoun takes an unreal tone sequence simply by adding the progressive future suffix. So anything in the future is unreal because we cannot dictate the future. Adita skoin, she usually drinks. That is not accounting for each and every single time someone drinks, which is why I discourage someone taking this as it's habitual. Because it's not habitual, it's usual, and it's also a reflection of your opinion, not a fact. Adita skoin, she usually drinks. Completive, real. Uwoni sa'i, she spoke. And unne sa'i, she stated. Those are both real things because they really happened in the past. Here are 4 forms of the completive stem that are unreal. Uwoni sa'i, she spoke supposedly. So the pronoun gets the unreal tone sequence 2-2. And simply by adding the suffix e, supposed, that makes it an unreal statement. Tajinezi, I will state. That's unreal because it's future. Hinezai, speak later. That's unreal because it's future. Daniwonisi, they will speak. Again, that's unreal because it's future. Immediate, real. There are 2 expressions ultimately that can be expressed by the immediate stem, and that is the command form and the immediate past. That right there is the distinction between real and unreal. If it's the immediate past, it's real. If it's the command, it's unreal because no action is actually taking place. You are just commanding it. Hinegi, you just stated it. Chadita, you just drank it. Hinegi, state it. Hadita, drink it. The infinitive, unreal. Unesti, for him or her to state. Unesti. So it takes the unreal pronoun. Unesti. Uwonihisti, for him or her to speak. Unreal pronoun. The reason why this 1-1 is underlined is because the real tone of that morpheme is a 3-3 tone. But 3s, when they are attached to unreal stems, they convert to 1-1. Uwonihisti. And uditasti, for him or her to drink it. Again, that's the unreal pronoun. Stem overview. The incompletive stem is used to say an action was, is, or will be happening. The completive stem is used to say the action did or will happen. The immediate stem is used to say make action happen or action just now happened. The infinitive stem is for the action to happen, and that is always an abstract idea or hypothetical. It is never real. Other reality distinguishing features: H and glottal alternation, H deletion, and pronoun tone shift. Keep in mind all 3 of these forms do the same thing. They separate the identities of the first and third person. So our first example is glottal, which means first person reality. H means third person, and it does not affect first person. So our example, Gadelaoska, concerns me directly because of the glottal stop. And Adelahoska does not affect me. So that H is saying third person over there. H deletion, first person reality. H is third person, does not affect first person. So example, Gadelahoka. This concerns me directly because the H is deleted. This does not affect me. That's third person. G, first person reality. Ka, third person, does not affect first person. Ginega, I'm stating. This concerns me directly. And kanega, she is stating. This does not affect me. This feature is necessary to maintain and respect the individuality of each person, and also to foster self-awareness of what truly affects us in life. This shows that our people have a built-in understanding of how to cope with the positives and negatives of life. By constantly focusing on what is real and unreal, we are able to let go of many problems that we can sometimes treat as real in English, but do not exist in the realm of reality in traditional Cherokee thought. So this is why we have seen a lot of our elders, like my great-grandparents and my great-aunts and uncles, something that they've gone through that looked to people that don't speak Cherokee, that looked, very traumatic. And indeed, it was traumatic for them. But because of our embedded cultural guidance in our language, you can see why those people were able to overcome those very difficult situations, because they were able to focus on what is truly significant and mattered in that moment. And they were able to apply their fight or flight because their spirit and their acceptance and acknowledgement of what is real in life helps them get back to living their lives instead of stuck in a traumatic state of being. And the language itself teaches you that. Atonic and tonic pronouns. The terms atonic and tonic refer to how the tones are perceived and articulated in predictable areas within the language. It is important to realize that these are not grammatical features, but reflections of spiritual belief embedded within the language itself. Atonic refers to when the pronoun in this case takes an atonic form. So, for example, reflecting that the idea of the conjugated verb is in an unrealistic state. Unrealistic states are reflected in the language not only by pronouns, but also by prepronoun prefixes, stem, and suffixes. Whenever you say an action could happen, supposedly happened, is in command form, or is an abstract notion like the infinitive, you will need to convert the pronoun to its atonic form. In contrast, when the action is truly a part of reality and actually was or is happening, you will need to use the atonic form of the pronoun. Simply by arming you with the traditional knowledge of why we shift the tone, you are able to apply the knowledge in a traditional way. Atonic and tonic shift of the pronoun occurs on all pronoun forms unless their default tone is already comprised of two tones. In the event this happens, you don't need to change anything and can simply say it the same way whether the action is real or unrealistic. The conditional suffixes and prefixes in this case are enough to convey this understanding, and the stem alone can convey that as well. What is polysynthesis? Polysynthesis has polypersonal agreement, noun incorporation, extensive use of suffixes, relatively free word order, and predominantly head marking. General remarks. Prefixes and suffixes together are called affixes. These convey information that other languages need separate words to express. Affixes identify subject with or with intransitives, the object, tense, aspect, and mood distinctions, noun roots incorporated or compounded with the verb, direction and adverbial notions, etc. Everything centers around the root word. Most of these highly inflected, fully conjugated root words are fully complete sentences with regards to what constitutes complete sentences in other languages such as English. That is why those of you that are trying to understand Cherokee word order, remember the one thing that's going to help serve you the most in that endeavor is to remember that verbs, once they're conjugated, are no longer to be thought of as verbs. Think of them as complete sentences. Then you will be able to know how to set your words around those complete sentences, because once something is a complete sentence, it can no longer have other things put into it. So you have to put important words around it. Polypersonal agreement. This means both the subject and the object are marked on the root word, and in Cherokee that is true. Ajilagwodi or Ajilagwodi. He or she likes him or her. Aji means he to him, or her to her, or her to him, or him to her. Not all languages have fused personal affixes. Iroquoian languages do, however. So, for example, here is a Seneca word, which I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce, but it does show that these pronouns do show relationships between people. Noun incorporation. This allows us to alter known concepts, giving them a more specific meaning. So in English, you have blackberry plus picking becomes the compound verb blackberry picking. The above formula for noun incorporation is root stem plus verb equals new specific verb. These compound expressions are made to express very specific actions rather than general ones. Shared characteristics of languages with noun incorporation. Valency reducing by one, either transitive to intransitive or ditransitive to transitive. Incorporated nouns are uninflected. No case marking, no plural marking, no noun class, no articles, no demonstratives. Agents are never incorporated. No beneficiaries or receivers. Noun incorporation is dead. What? It has been said by other linguists, Methuen primarily, and to quote her, that noun incorporation is archaic and not a functional part of contemporary Cherokee. This statement is based on a handful of forms analyzed, and in my professional opinion, these are not enough forms or substantial evidence to make such a claim. I have personally incorporated nouns and witnessed them incorporated in my lifetime, and I or any of the elder speakers I have spoken with are by no means archaic. To prove that this process is alive and well, we will translate the above English example of noun incorporation, blackberry picking. Step 1. We must isolate the noun stem. The noun we will be incorporating is blackberry. Kanugatl. Step 2. We now have to isolate the verb we want to incorporate with the noun. We have to use the infinitive tense form of picking without any prefix inflection. So uwu tasty becomes u tasty because that is the root with it's the infinitive base. Step 3. We now have to convert the root stem of the verb back to its tonic or tonal form. So u tasty becomes u tasty. Step 4, we now convert the noun blackberry to its stem form. So from kanugat to nugat. Step 5, now we follow the rule for noun incorporation. Rule: the incorporated noun stem is preposed, which just means connected before, to the verb. A connector vowel "a" is inserted between them if the noun stem ends in a consonant and the verb root begins in a consonant. Let's look at both of the words in the order in which they are supposed to connect. If the noun stem is preposed to the verb, that means the first word we need is blackberry, followed by the verb picking. So nugat, blackberry, and udesti, to remove it from hanging, is what that means. We can see that the noun stem has no vowel, and the joining verb stem begins with a vowel. Therefore, we can just connect the two terms because consonant-vowel, consonant phonological rules are being followed. Thus, we end up with nugatludesti. This is our complete incorporated noun root that we can further conjugate. Step 6, we now rely on what we have learned about pronoun prefixes so we can classify this correctly. All we know is the following. Our root, nugat ludesti. The intended person is third person singular, and the intended time frame is the incompletive past. Was doing verb. To determine whether we use set A, shared experience, or set B, individual experience, we look at the noun root blackberry. This noun was originally kanugatl, and ka is a set A third person pronoun, ga. The aspirated form ka comes from the H of the root. Knowing that ka comes from an H in the root helps you to realize that the root should be in isolation. This also tells us that this verb is classified as set A by default, so the conjugation follows the rules of default set A conjugation. Set A default conjugation rules. Present stem is set A, incompletive stem is set A, completive stem is set B, immediate stem is set A, and the infinitive stem is set B. This will never change. This is a rule. Step 7. We can now conjugate the stem forms for third person singular subject and plural object, because why would anyone just pick one blackberry? Also, this allows us to see what happens to the stems with regards to additional particles to make the incorporated noun work grammatically. So here are the conjugated forms. The present tense, danugat ludestiha, or danugat ludestiha. H motion focus. He or she is blackberry picking. Habitual. Danugat ludestiskoin. E is continuation. SG is subject object focus. He or she is usually blackberry picking. Completive. Danugat ludestanai. On is the purposive intent, or it is the populative infix used to make an infinitive into a completive. He or she had been blackberry picking. Imperative, tanugat ludesta. Tanugat ludesta. Tanugat ludesta. That's the atonic imperative. You'll be blackberry picking. You be blackberry picking. You're basically telling them to be in that state of being. Be blackberry picking. Infinitive, junugat ludestokti. Junugat ludestokti. This means the instrumental infix for him or her to be blackberry picking. When clauses. What you need to ask yourself. Is the statement real or hypothetical? The answer to this will tell you which pre-pronoun, prefixes, pronouns, and suffixes you need to use. When is the action of the verb occurring? This answer will tell you which stem you will need to use. For example, either completive stem, incompletive stem, immediate stem, or the infinitive stem. What does she usually do on the weekend? Donna usti. Adane hon. Sandota wasti. Usquatai. So that means when it finished. So when the week had finished, what does she usually do? I guess we will let the dog outside when that happens. Aseti. Yidalisko stas. Unago isti. Ski. Then nustanidolai. It had gone on. So when and if that had gone on. I was about to eat when my son started crying. Tagalistayanis agweza chuja. Ulena hai. When he started. Atloi hai. Crying. She is getting better at speaking Cherokee. Taje lagatan. Chalak. Gawaniskai. When she was speaking. So that means in the past you've noticed that when she was speaking it, she had gotten better. So that's why you choose the incompletive stem and say was speaking. Go on this game. I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. Tikladiski. Yagwastotti. Awaduliho. Agwatasain. When I grow. Awatasain. My stomach hurt when I ate. Oxquart. Jawestanel. Agwastan no nine. When I finished after I ate. Agwastan no nine. When I had finished eating. She put on a pretty belt when she went to town. Uwoduhi adat lost. Udad lotlai. Tigaduha. Uwena. Uwena. That means when she went. But went is uwena sa'i. Uwena sa'i. But we just say uwena when she went. When he threw the ball down, it bounced. Ela diwudina. Squat laced. Udadina sa'i. Wudina means when he threw it. But we say wudina sa'i. He threw it there. So wudina is when he threw it. There. When he finished writing, he stretched. Usquadan. That means when he finished. Gohueliska. Writing. Udayas tanai. He stretched. When it's time for him to eat, he never stops. Ustahti. Ustahti. Utli ilotla. That means when it comes time. Tlailahiu. Not ever. Yalewistiskoi. Does he stop? When he heard the dog bark, he ran. Geet dasiwiska. Utagana. That means when he heard it. Udanos tanai. He ran off. Udanos tanai. Heard utaganai. That means he heard it. But utagana. That means when he heard it. Utagana. When the girl winked at him, he got embarrassed. Agehuj uktastan nela. Udehosain. Agehuj uktastan nela. Udehosain. So winked at another, uktastan nela. But when you say uktastan nela, that means when he winked at her. Or when she winked at him. I like to dive when I'm swimming. Aguadetti. Aguilanct. You got the water. You got the water. When I swim. Versus the water. He's swimming. You got the water. When I swim. When it becomes summer, it gets warm. Gogi inustana. Agana woskoi. Gogi, summer. Inustana. When it happens. Agana woskoi. It's warm. Or gets warm. And then nustanai means it happened. When his shirt got dirty, he changed it. Gadan hanustana. Dirty when it happened. Unawa, his shirt. Unawa iyansai. Unawa iyansai. He changed it. So nustanai it happened, but nustana when it happened. This clause could also be made by adding the foretone to the regular past tense stem form nustana. Nustana, because this action actually truly took place. Nustana. Or if you said nustanai, that'd be like when it happened too. Nustanai. But 4-4 would be on na because that's the full long rightmost long vowel. When something is hidden from him, he finds it easily. Gohusti. Yagaskalonela. Ahit. Awatiskoin. Gohusti yagaskalonela. Ahit. Awatiskoin. So it was hidden from him or her. Agaskatlanelai. Agaskatlanelai. And then Yagaskaslanela, when it's hidden from him. When the sun was shining, Nadogai Agaliska, Nadogai Agaliska, and then it was shining, Agaliska, Agaliska, when it was shining. When the sun shines, Nadogai Ugalisa, Ugalisa, when it shines, and then shined, Ugalisa, Ugalisa. The sun just warmed me when it shined just now. Nadogai Agigana Wostas, Jagalihi, Nadogai Agigana Wostas, Jagalihi, and then it just now shined, Wagalihi. New terms, the traditional method. What this means is this is making new words that no one has put in a dictionary or seen, using the old, well, I shouldn't say old, but the true way of creating new words using traditional ways of thinking. So new vocabulary, tikayuhkanalieti, tikayuhkanalieti. Tikayuk means like a jaw full of teeth. Tikayuhka. And then lieti means to rub on. So that's toothpaste. Tikayuhki lost. Tikayuhki lost. Is a toothbrush, because that's what you wash the teeth with. Tigatlagi stokti. Tigatlagi stokti. That's a brush. Tigatlagi stokti. Familiar word, but a revived verb, is watching. Ayauska. He or she is watching. And that's from Ayausk, which is a soldier. Jiyauska. I'm watching. Ayauskoi. He or she usually watches. Ayauskoi. He or she was watching. Uwayausai. He or she watched. Uwayausti. For him or her to watch. Uwayausai. He or she would have watched. Aniyauski. Guard or soldiers. Uniyausai. The guard, a special guard. So, for example, Sanoy Uniyausai. That's like the night watch or third shift guards. And then Ijatayauskestiwadina. Ijatayauskestiwadina. Y'all be on guard. That's like the command, like y'all be watchful or be on guard. Be on your guard. Snapping fingers. Tega yesanoya stihan. Tega yesanoya tlistihan. Tega yesanoya stihan. He or she's snapping her fingers. Teji yesanoya listihan. Teji yesanoya listihan. I'm snapping my fingers. Do yesanoya stanai. Do yesanoya stanai. She snapped her fingers. Tega yesanoya stiskoi. Tega yesanoya stiskoi. He or she snaps his or her fingers usually. Tiesanoya listan. Tiesanoya listan. Snap your fingers. Te uyesanoya stokti. Te uyesanoya stokti. Te uyesanoya stokti. For her to snap her fingers. Crossing arms. Tegatoya neskaliha. Tegatoya neskaliha. He or she's crossing his or her arms. Tejitoya neskaliha. I'm crossing my arms. Tutoya neskalahai. He or she crossed his or her arms. Tegatoya neska liskoin. He or she crosses his or her arms. Tegatoya neska liskoin. Titoya neska lang. Cross your arms. Titoya neska lang. Teutoya neska sti. Teutoya neska sti. For him or her to cross his or her arms. Tegalaya neska liha. He or she is crossing his or her legs. Tejilaya neska liha. I'm crossing my legs. Tulaya neska lahai. Tulaya neska lahai. He or she crossed his or her legs. Tegalaya neska liskoin. Tegalaya neska liskoin. He or she crossed his or her legs. Tilaya neska long. Tilaya neska long. Cross your legs. Teulaya neska sti. Teulaya neska sti. For him or her to cross his or her legs. Teulaya neska sti. Giving a high five. Utoya lane, huh? He or she is high-fiving him or her. That's literally like sticking your hand out towards him. Utoya lane, huh? Chiyatoya lane, huh? I'm high-fiving him. Utoya lane lane. He or she high-fived him or her. Hiyatoya lane go. Give him or her a high five. Hiyatoya lane go. Utoya lane sti. For him or her to give him a high five. Squatoya lane go. Squatoya lane go. Give me a high five. Flipping someone off, literally. To stand a finger up at another. Alye salehtane, huh? He or she's flipping him or her off. Chiali salehtane, huh? I'm flipping him or her off. Ulye salehtane lai. He or she flipped him or her off. Alye salehtane hoi. He or she usually flips him or her off. Hiali see. Sinaha. Hiali salehta si. Oh. Hiali salehta si. Flip him or her off. Ulye salehtane ti. For him or her to flip him or her off. Tajiyali salehtane li. Oh. Tajiyali salehtane li. I'm going to flip him or her off. Hesti. Gisqualie salehta si. Hest gisqualie les. Let's see. Hest gisqualie salehta si. Hest gisqualie salehta si. Hest gisqualie salehta si. Don't flip me off.